Hey everybody, today I'm down in Southern California because I've been able to get my hands on the all-new second generation Honda HR-V. And contrary to popular belief, this is not the same vehicle that we expected it to be. This is actually an entirely unique HR-V designed entirely for the North American market. You see, the first generation HR-V was based very directly on the Honda Vezel, sold in Japan, and it was in turn based very directly on the Honda Fit. This is a very different vehicle. This is considerably larger because design-wise it has been coordinated a little bit with the 11th generation Civic. That means not only that this generation HR-V is larger than the previous generation and larger than the Vezel in Japan, but it also has a more premium interior. Let's start out with the exterior design. Up front, we have a much more grown-up theme than we had in the previous generation HR-V. Full LED headlights, reflectors in this one with the distinctive LED accent strip there. No fog lights down at the bottom. That did surprise me. And the grille definitely gives me a bit of a Ford vibe. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comment section below. Honda's decided that they don't want all their vehicles to look like Russian nesting dolls. So the HR-V has a unique design all on its own, but again, very grown-up compared to the original. If you get the base LX or the EXL trim, then you got the grille that you saw before. If you get the mid-level sport trim, we get a different vibe for the front end. We get the sort of triple chevron theme, which gives me a lot of Citroën vibes. The LED headlights remain the same with the accent strip, and the headlights themselves definitely give me a bit of an Acura vibe. Certainly something good for an inexpensive compact crossover. The new HR-V is considerably larger than the outgoing model. It is 2.6 inches wider and 8.7 inches longer, now at 179.8 inches long. That puts this in competition with a lot of the more recent subcompact crossovers in America, which have also grown considerably, and in very direct competition to the all-new Corolla Cross. Some of the length increase in the new HR-V goes to the rear passenger area, and a reasonable amount goes to new passenger protection standards in the HR-V. And that's why we have this much longer hood profile than we found in the previous model. It also gives the HR-V a more elegant look. In keeping with the more elegant and premium theme of this generation HR-V, we have full LED taillights, really an interesting twist for a mainstream subcompact vehicle. We don't even have full LED taillights in a number of luxury entries. That includes an amber turn signal and an LED backup light element right there. If you get the sport trim, which is again the mid-level trim in the HR-V, we get a single exhaust tip over there on the passenger side. Other models have more of a clean lower bumper look. The other way to differentiate the sport trim from the rest of the lineup is we have a black spoiler right here rather than a body color spoiler on the rear hatch. Speaking of the hatch, it is a manual hatch still, and on that hatch is the only place you'll find an all-wheel drive logo. We'll talk about this a little bit later in the video, but one of the reasons the HR-V is more expensive than the last generation model is because we get more active driver assistance tech than we had before. Standard on all versions of the HR-V is Honda's sensing suite of safety systems, including radar adaptive cruise control, their advanced lane centering system, and autonomous emergency braking. If you get the sport trim, then you're upgraded into blind spot monitoring, and if you get this very top-end trim, we get front and rear parking sensors. Depending on the trim you're looking at, you'll also get low-speed autonomous braking, both front and rear. A common complaint with the previous generation HR-V was that the engine felt a little bit underpowered. So to solve that, Honda has given us a new, larger engine. This is a now 2-liter, 4-cylinder engine producing 158 horsepower and 138 pound-feet of torque. As you might guess, it is shared with the Honda Civic. Fuel economy will range between 27 and 28 miles per gallon, depending on whether or not you choose all-wheel drive. So if you're interested in a Civic and you want all-wheel drive, this is the vehicle to get. Since this is a complete redesign for the HR-V, it gave Honda the opportunity to change the seating position inside just a little bit for this generation. On this particular model, which is now the EXL trim, we have a multi-way power driver seat, but still no two-way adjustable lumbar support. I would love to see a manual lumbar support in this vehicle. We have a tilt telescopic steering column with a large range of motion, and as you'll see in a bit, the interior definitely has a very Honda Civic vibe to it. Unfortunately, at the time that I'm recording this video, I don't have final legroom or headroom specifications, but I wouldn't be surprised if the HR-V grew a little bit thanks to its external stretch for this generation. There is still plenty of room in here, and that's always been a selling point for the HR-V, is how roomy the inside is versus the outside. With this front seat comfortably adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, I have about 6 inches of legroom left, meaning that this might be one of the few subcompact crossovers that's affordable and will accommodate a rear-facing child seat behind a taller adult up front. That's certainly something that's difficult to do in the Corolla Cross. Now, if you scoot over to the middle seat here, it does appear that this has gained a little bit of width versus the outgoing HR-V. Again, the body is a little bit more than 2.5 inches wider, but I'm not sure yet how much that translates to interior volume. One thing that did surprise me, however, is that the HR-V has lost the magic seat functionality. Honda says they deleted that feature to make the rear seat bottom cushion especially more comfortable than the previous generation, and you will notice that all of the seat cushions in this vehicle are a little bit more thickly padded than a lot of the competition. The rear seat still folds down, and you can see that the seat bottom cushion scoots forward to help maximize cargo space. Even though this is an all-wheel drive HRV, we have a very minimal hump in the rear seat area, definitely making this more practical if you do need to put 5 people inside the HRV. One interesting omission, however, though, we do not have any rear seat air vents. There's just a storage pocket there and a little cutout, possibly for some future feature. Despite the size increase, cargo capacity comes in at 24.4 cubic feet, which is just 1/10 above the outgoing model. Now, I have asked for a little bit of clarification on this because I assume that Honda is still using the same measurement standard as they did with the previous generation, but we'll have more of an update when we can get our hands on the HRV for a complete drive. If you fold the second row down, you get 55.1 cubic feet, a little bit of a reduction over the outgoing model, likely due to the deletion of the magic seat feature. Going for a dive under the load floor, we do find some additional storage space here and a foam divider, which helps reduce cabin noise and, of course, give you those little dividers. If you were to take this out, we find a temporary spare tire, some additional storage room, and what appears to be enough room if you wanted to put a full-size spare tire in here aftermarket. Let's do our interior tour in the EXL trim because it has a lighter headliner, so it's easier to see what's going on. This model has the available power moonroof. You can see it's a pretty standard sized unit just over the driver and front passengers' heads. Maybe I just love LED lights, but for me the coolest feature in here are the new touch LED reading lights for the rear seats. It has a very premium, very airplane vibe with the chrome ring around it. I think that's really elegantly done. The driver and front passenger get height adjustable shoulder belts and two-way adjustable headrests. The first thing I really noticed when hopping inside is that the front seats are much more thickly padded than the previous generation. They definitely should give better support for longer road trips. EXL is the trim you're going to want if you want leather upholstery. We have perforated seat bottom cushion and seat back cushion sections. Although these seats are not ventilated, they are heated. The biggest change for the HRV, I think, happens inside, where this has a much more expressive and more premium design than the previous model. Taking a look at the front doors, you definitely have a different vibe than we had in the prior model, with a lot of different shapes, including the hourglass theme that you see here on the door handle that is repeated throughout the interior. As you'd expect in a relatively less expensive vehicle, we only have soft touch materials right there for that armrest and the very top of the door trim up front. To give you an idea of the general theme, let's take a quick pan across the dashboard here. You can see that the theme is definitely Honda Civic, but it's not an exact copy. Like the Honda Civic, we have this interesting cheese grater pattern running right across the dashboard, but unlike the Civic, we don't have a joystick and the knob arrangement for the air vent. Instead, we get perhaps a more traditional four-way toggle there. The entire upper section of the dashboard is made from soft touch materials, although it does change as it drops down there towards that cheese grater section. And then at the bottom of the dash, we have a large bin-style glove compartment. You shouldn't have any problem fitting larger tablet computers inside. In the middle of the dashboard, this model has the optional 9-inch infotainment system. There's also a smaller 7-inch infotainment system that you'll find in the base trim and in the sport trim. This model, as you can see, features wireless CarPlay integration. If I go back to the Honda menu, you'll see that this is very familiar software if you've driven in any modern Honda recently. There's some physical buttons on the side, home, back button, track forward, backward, and a power volume knob, and then a lot of touch functions inside. Continuing down the dashboard, we find more of those air vent toggles, again more of that cheese grater section. We then find the controls for the dual zone automatic climate control that this model has and the heated front seats. Under the climate controls, we find the Qi wireless charging mat, definitely important for wireless CarPlay, although I did have troubles wirelessly charging my phone with its thicker case on it, so keep that in mind. There's a single USB port right there, 2 large cup holders, a pretty traditional console shifter for a Honda. Drive mode selector right there. You can see that we have more of that hourglass theme going on with a large storage cubby right underneath. Under the button bank, we have a semi-hidden storage area and dual USB-C charge ports, one on either side. That's a really great touch because you can plug your smartphone in and just leave it in this rubbery tray just below. Now on top, we have hill descent control, again the drive mode toggle, electric parking brake, and auto brake hold. Between the front seats, we find a conventional padded armrest that opens up to reveal a fairly large storage compartment, no USB ports inside. If you're interested in what the key looks like, that's the answer. Standard in all models is this partial LCD instrument cluster. Over here on this side, we have a 7-inch LCD. We then have a physical speedometer over there on the right side. Inside the LCD section, we find pretty typical things like all-wheel drive torque distribution, status of the vehicle's active safety systems, and of course our trip computer readouts. The steering wheel has been borrowed right out of the Civic. On the left side, we find controls for the infotainment system, volume up, down, as well as a home button and scroll wheel for that multifunction LCD cluster. On the right side, we have the controls for the standard radar adaptive cruise control and the advanced lane centering system. You'll notice there are no paddle shifters on the back, but we do have a sport mode and a low mode on the traditional console shifter. If you get the lower end trims, we get the smaller screen and a few more physical buttons a bit more spread out. Menu button, back button, connect button, some direct access buttons across the bottom, and then we have an additional knob on the right-hand side. And in the Sport trim, the dual zone automatic climate control becomes a single zone unit. For 2023, the base price of the HR-V, that would be the LX trim, starts at $23,650 with all the extra driver assistance tech standard on that model. That's about $1,200 more expensive than the new Toyota Corolla Cross and about $1,800 more than the outgoing model. If you want all-wheel drive, expect to pay at least $25,150 plus, of course, destination. If you're interested in the Sport trim, which is going to get you this unique look with the wheel package that we find on this model and wider tires than we find on any of the other versions of HR-V, including slightly larger wheels as well, 18-inch alloys on that model, that's going to be about the same price as the base trim with all-wheel drive, $25,650. Of course, you can get all-wheel drive on that Sport model as well. If you want the EXL, which is going to give you the bigger infotainment system, the leather upholstery, things like the front and rear parking sensors, and of course that sunroof there, then that's going to set you back $27,450 and will top out at around $28,950. So the pricing range on the HR-V is considerably narrower than some of the competition, especially if you're trying to compare this to something like a Mazda CX-30 that can get quite a bit more expensive. Although I've been able to spend my day with the EXL and the Sport trims here in the studio, I have not been able to drive either one. So for that, you're going to have to wait until Brian can drive it a little bit later this month up in the Pacific Northwest. But it's safe to say that this is probably going to be one of the best values in the subcompact crossover segment, and I think one of the more attractive models as well. I really love what Honda has done with the full LED tail lamp modules. I know I keep saying that, but I think that really is a step that elevates this above most of the competition. Really, outside of Mazda, pretty much everybody else in this segment uses some, not quite as attractive combination tail lamp modules that are a combination of LED modules and big, chunky, old-fashioned incandescent bulbs. I also like the Sport trim and the additional touches it gets down here at the bottom, but let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below. And as always, hit subscribe, find me over at Facebook, Instagram, all those other social places, and of course, check out EV Buyer's Guide, our new channel as well. I'll see all of you later.